Hey guys, me back again for another video, and today I'm going to be talking about the 5 things that I love and hate about Forza Horizon 4. Now the first thing I want to touch on is Forza Horizon 4's map and setting. Now when it was first announced that it was going to be in the UK, a lot of us absolutely cheered for joy and thought, wow, this is going to be great, it's going to replicate our car culture, we're going to be able to drive cars, you know, that are similar to ones that we drive in real life, we're going to be going to places that we're familiar with, and unfortunately, although this sort of lived up to its hype, it didn't really at the same time, because yes, it has some roads that obviously are similar to UK, yes, the road signs are similar, and yes, the motorway is vaguely similar. However, that's pretty much where the sort of similarities stop, apart from the landscape and stuff, as obviously it's set in northern England and Scotland, so at the end of the day you're only going to be exploring those two bits of the UK, and obviously the UK is definitely quite vast. I mean, we haven't even touched on the south of England or Northern Ireland yet, and you know, they're completely different places to sort of the north of England and Scotland as far as landscape and everything like that. And by setting this location, I feel that they have sort of limited themselves in the sort of content that they can output. Now obviously it's very difficult to incorporate the entire of the UK within a single game, as the UK is obviously very different, and if they did make it representing sort of, you know, every single different part, it would probably be slightly rushed or slightly just like it was put together specifically for that single purpose, and I mean that's not exactly what I'm after. I am more going at the angle of where they chose. They chose obviously Edinburgh, and they've also got parts of northern England and obviously Scotland, as it is Edinburgh. And I just feel that they would have done better if they would have put it in the south of the UK. I would propose, if I were the one that was asked to do it and the development team came to me and said, right, where should we do this game? I would probably say, have the city as London, because obviously London has a big supercar scene, it has a big car scene overall, and that would fit extremely well with the game's cars, as you know, obviously it's got a hell of a lot of supercars, a hell of a lot of exotic cars, and less sort of average, everyday, normal people's cars. The cars in the game are obviously very expensive to drive, as when you're playing a game, you know, a lot of the time you're going to want to be driving cars, you know, that you probably think you can never, you know, have in your life or whatever. It says it's like an experience that's obviously it's fun to drive, you know, 200 miles per hour down the motorway and stuff. So yeah, I think London, and then as far as the festival site, I reckon if they did Goodwood, the Goodwood Festival of Speed, where all that's held, if they did Goodwood and then they turned Goodwood into a slight music festival but still kept some of the originality with maps, so you could do the hill climb, you could do just the Goodwood racetrack, and you could do the drifting arena as they added last year in the Festival of Speed, I think that would be absolutely awesome. And there's a lot of landscape and landmarks that you could have for Forza Horizon in the south of the UK as well. So you could have Brands Hatch, as that probably would be sort of top left of the map, maybe, sort of middle top left of the map. And then you could have obviously the White Cliffs of Dover, you've got London as previously said, you've got towns like Margate and Hastings, you know, where you could both do like attractions at, and of course you've just got the British countryside, and I think that would have been awesome if they had incorporated all of that in, because they could have many tracks, like obviously Forza, they like to do a lot of rallying as well as other stuff, as well as like drifting and drag. They also put an emphasis on rallying. For example, they incorporated the rally suspension, so they could, you know, have more tracks like Biggin Hill, for example, near Dover. That would be an awesome track that everyone would love to go around, or even a sort of alteration of it if they can't do the track specifically. That would be an absolutely awesome thing rather than just a completely made up one, and it would make the whole game slightly more realistic. So to sum that point up, basically if they had changed the location and changed some of the stuff about the game to make it more realistic to the UK, I think they would have hit the nail on the head for more content. And so my second point is the cars. Now the cars in Forza, it's absolutely great that they have incorporated the majority of car scenes out there. Now obviously there are some that will not be in there, but I mean as far as the main ones, I mean you've got drifting, you've got drag racing, you've got track racing. They're sort of 3 of the biggest in my opinion of the sort of scenes, and they've got, you know, hallmark cars from each one of those. I mean, I'm going to go on a slight tangent here, but I mean I think they could have made the Dodge Demon a lot more powerful, as obviously that car in real life is really powerful and extremely fast, 0 to 60. However, in the game you can get a lot of other cars that can beat it just hands down. And I mean, even if you feel the upgraded Dodge Demon, it's fast, don't get me wrong, but it's not anywhere near as fast as some of the other cars. And I mean, personally, I've made drag cars that have beat the fully upgraded Dodge Demon down the drag strip, and you know, in a more realistic scenario, that would never ever happen. And so I think it's sort of a slight letdown to the sort of drag community that, you know, the number one hallmark car as far as brand new production cars, the Dodge Demon, just hasn't really been represented very well. But on to my main point, I think they could have added more cars that were British. And yes, they added some, a lot of MGs and a lot of other cars like that. However, I don't think they quite hit the nail on the head on what they added. Now, it's brilliant that they've added stuff, you know, like some of the older MGs, you know, and they've added some other types of cars that are British. But I don't think they quite hit the nail on the head. I think they personally, I think they should have added cars that regular people drive more, and cars that we actually drive in England. They don't necessarily have to be British. They just have to be cars that people drive here and people modify and make fast. Actually in real life in England and the UK as a whole, rather than just adding a lot of cars that sort of fit the bill. And if it did a little more research into what people actually modify and actually drive on the UK roads, it would make the whole game a lot more, not realistic, but more catering to the audience, as obviously we'd want to drive cars that we can get up and modify. For example, I was driving around with my friend a few months ago in Forza, and I remember him saying, "Oh, look at that NPC car over there." I was like, "Oh, what is it?" He's like, "Oh, it's a Fiesta." And I was like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Oh, it'd be awesome if we could customise those." And it got me thinking, well, yeah, it would be actually, because people actually customise them here. I mean, it's more that sort of realism sense, and obviously if you're going to represent the UK and a game set in the UK, then you're going to want to represent their car culture. Now on to my third point is the festival itself and the whole game Forza Horizon. Well, I mean, Forza Horizon obviously started off in Horizon 1 and it was a game based around cars at a music festival, and I feel like that's been lost somewhere along the lines of the Forza games, and now it's just more of an arcadey racer. Whereas if you look at the first one, for example, obviously the graphics are trying to look reasonably realistic, whereas if you look at the Forza Horizon 4, yes, they're good, but they're not trying to go on that whole realism factor. Like obviously GTA 5 when that first came out, they were trying their best to make it as realistic as possible, as far as the graphics, well in my opinion anyway, because obviously it looked great when it first came out, and today it still looks a good game. But I just feel with Forza, I like the graphics personally, I actually like that sort of colour palette they've used and everything, but at the same time it would have been awesome if they'd, you know, obviously made it more realistic. But back to the festival and the cars, I just feel the game, it would be better sort of set as not a completely arcadey race, because obviously it's going to be arcadey, it's not, you know, Dirt Rally, it's not a Assetto Corsa, it's not an actual sim game. I just feel it would have fit better if they had the whole game focused around the festival and had the driving and handling dynamics slightly more realistic, and the game was focused more for driving and the driving of cars, and not just, you know, getting a load of money, buying a load of houses, and then just upgrading, you know, the best cars you can possible. It'd be nicer if you had more of a progression, which brings me on to my next point, the story of Forza Horizon 4. Now yes, they have added some cool stuff in the DLCs, and yes, they're alright, but at exactly the same time, in the base game and within the DLCs, I don't quite think they did enough. It's great they've added stuff like the Top Gear missions and all that sort of stuff. I just feel it would have been a lot better if they had more of an actual story rather than did it as a completely open sandbox. Because obviously Grand Theft Auto is a complete open sandbox, yet they had a great story to it. And that's not an impossible thing to do. And I reckon if they spent a bit more time thinking about it, they could have come up with a really cool story to go along with the UK. Like, I don't know, just thinking straight off the top of my head now, maybe you could have been a guy that lived in, you know, one of the houses down near the Gables, and you said that you wanted to become a car collector or something like that, you know, you worked your way out, but I don't know. I just think it would have been awesome if they had more of an actual storyline to go with it, rather than the sort of mismatch of missions and stuff that they have that are reasonably tied together, but they don't have like any consequences either way depending on which one you choose or anything like that. Saying that, the driving missions are fun to do, and obviously I like doing them. And I also really like how they have the weekly challenges and the cars that you can win in the weekly challenges if you do the speed traps and the races. And then now my last point is the servers. Now obviously Forza Horizon 4, it has good things and bad things about the sort of online playability of the game, and I'll get the bad stuff out of the way first. So number one, it's really not very stable on PC, and obviously I've done videos on my other channel of how to try and fix it, which actually has worked for me since then, but I don't think I should be fixing a game I've paid a fair amount of money for just to play online with my friends who are both on PC and console. But I mean, that's the bad out of the way, just the servers being slightly glitchy and stuff like that occasionally. But now to the good things is, I think it's really cool they made it crossplay, because now I can actually play with my friends on Xbox and stuff like that when I'm playing Forza Horizon 4, which is very useful because some of my friends don't actually have PCs, don't have PCs, or they're in the process of thinking of building or building PCs. So it's nice that I can play a game with them like I used to do years ago when I used to be on Xbox One and Xbox 360. And going off on a slight tangent, the game is actually pretty well optimised, to be honest, for PC. I mean, there are ones that run far worse, that have far lower graphical quality, and I think they've done quite a good job on optimising it. It's sort of, in my opinion, fair to what your hardware would be, to what settings you have. For example, I've got a 1066GB and I run the game almost at, you know, max settings at maybe dropping lowest to mid 60s and generally running at around 80 FPS, which is really good. And I mean, that's absolutely brilliant with people that have got newer cards. Obviously come out with the 20 series of graphics cards. Everyone with a 20 series of graphics card will be able to run the game almost max settings at over 60 FPS, which is extremely good, because that means it opens the game up to a whole new audience, and it sort of stops that barrier between people thinking they have to buy stupid expensive hardware to get decent frame rates. That is at 1080p, obviously, it's not 4K, so if you're playing at 4K, you're going to get a lower frame rate. But at exactly the same time, if you've got a PC and stuff like that, you're going to know the differences between resolution and frame rate, and you're just going to make your mind up with whatever you do and whatever screen you use. Thanks for watching, guys. It's been a bit of a ramble, this video. I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to do a video on the positives and negatives, in my opinion, about Forza. Now, obviously, I have loads more. But at the same time, I thought I'd shed some other light on Forza and maybe, you know, tell you guys some of the stuff that you forgot about the games if you haven't played the ones, you know, the Forza Horizon 1 and 2 recently, about how the game used to be slightly different, and obviously it's changed direction, again, for the positive or for the negative, depending on your opinion of the whole thing. I mean, games change all the time, don't they? I mean, look at the Assassin's Creed franchise. That changed almost completely when they brought out Origins and they decided to go for an RPG game. Obviously, some people liked it, some people didn't like it. I personally didn't really like it, but there were a lot of people that absolutely hated, you know, the story way of playing Assassin's Creed before. So obviously this video has been highly opinionated, and a lot of you guys will disagree with this, and I mean a lot of people will agree with it. I mean, I've got friends on actually both sides of this matter, which is quite funny. So some of them are going to be contacting me after this is released saying, oh yeah, I completely agree with your video, you know, oh that's really cool. But at the same time, I'm probably going to get people contact me and going, mate, what are you talking about? You're chatting a lot of shite. But anyway, thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you got some information out of this video, and I hope it inspires you to play Forza Horizon more, obviously, because it's a great game, and it inspires you to maybe start creating your own content. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and have a good one.